Hello and welcome to the Blessings in the Streets podcast. I am your host, Joseph B. Roberts, and in studio with me today is a brother I had the pleasure of knowing now for about 2.5 years.
Right.
We connected through a mutual authors group that when we were in the zone of trying to get our first books out and understanding the process and the details to all of that. He was one of the first individuals in this large group that I had an opportunity to connect with and actually develop a brotherhood, a friendship with. We've had multiple conversations in the past about the process and just trying to be of encouragement and support of one another, which I've greatly appreciated that in knowing this brother. He is an author, he's an entrepreneur, he's a speaker, he's an instructor. He's all about pouring into the lives of young brothers out here, trying to make their lives better using examples from his own personal life. But most importantly, he's a man of God, a man of integrity. And I'm so thankful to have him on board this evening, taking time out of his very busy schedule to hang out with us for a little while to share a bit of his journey, his story, with the hopes of, again, inspiring and encouraging others, particularly when it comes to dealing with the challenges and adversities of life. So it is my privilege, ladies and gentlemen, my honor to have this brother on the show. My brother Andre, thank you so much for being with us this evening.
Peace. Thank you, brother. It is my pleasure to be here, and I'm glad that we were able to put this together. Since we met in the group and everything else, so I'm excited about it. So let's get to it, man.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. So before we jump into our segments for this evening, my brother, I do want to give you an opportunity to
Mhm.
share a little bit intro, if you will, about yourself, who you are, where you're from, what you do. Kind of give our audience a taste of who is Brother Andre.
Right. Who was Brother Andre? So I'm born and raised in Detroit. I'm the oldest boy of 10 children. I have an older sister, 2 years older than me. Went to Detroit public schools. I'm a public school guy. West side of Detroit. Went to school on the east side of Detroit. And education was a big part of what my parents wanted to instill in me. And I grew up during the 80s, during the crack era. Like I said, went to public school, so I experienced a lot of regular Detroit stuff. But I was an athlete. I ran track in high school, and then I did well academically, went to college. And while I was in college, during my last year of college, I became a father, and that changed my life for the trajectory of my life forever. But it was a good thing, and we'll get into a lot of those details. But that's who I am. Eventually, I went to podiatry school to be a foot doctor, a foot surgeon, and that didn't work out for me. And then I worked in a medical laboratory, and I worked in the middle of the night. And one night, I took a practice LSAT test. It did good. Took another one, did good, and I went to law school. I got into law school, and I went to law school when I was 30. Wife and 2 children, and that was a hell of an experience, and I got through that. And my wife was a lawyer. She trained me. She trained me how to be a lawyer, business lawyer. And after graduating from law school, I founded a nonprofit for young fathers like myself to help them. And a lot. There's going to be a lot more. But I got into working with business owners, entrepreneurs, helping form business, intellectual property, trademark, patents, copyright, and that's what I did as a career, as well as being in community economic development. My friends told me, I said, so what do you think I should tell people I do? He said, man, you an advocate, you a
Mm.
grassroots activist. I said, for real, that's what y'all think about? And I had never thought about that, but I guess that's what you can call me. I've had a lot of different titles, but brother is a title that I take seriously because I have so many siblings, and I try to be your brother first to help you out. And at this point in my life, I turned 50 a couple years ago. I'm just trying to pour back into that next generation and make their life a little bit easier to help them navigate some of the challenges that I experienced growing up as a regular dude from the west side of Detroit.
Man, I love that. I love that. And thank you for giving us that intro about yourself. I think it's just powerful. And I think some of your friends were spot on when they talked about you being and activist. And I was kind of thinking some titles in my head as well. But for me, I'm thinking, you're a man who's identified what his purpose in life is, and you're walking in that purpose, and you're allowing God to use you in so many different facets in so many ways, and the impact has just been phenomenal. And the crazy thing is, you're still just scratching the surface in it. And so many lives to touch, so many ways to be a game changer in this world and impact lives is phenomenal, man. So again, great work that you're doing so far. And we're gonna learn more about your journey here, because this is really exciting, and just love what you're about and what you represent and what you're doing. So that's great. That's great.
Awesome.
So so my brother Andre, want to kind of jump back a little bit. When we talk about our stories, our journeys, I'm always a big proponent of trying to see where does the foundational basis of our story begin. And you kind of shared a little bit with us about
Mhm.
your beginnings in Detroit, but that's exactly where I want to delve in a little bit further, is in those beginnings, because I believe it's critical. It's essential when you're telling somebody's story. You have to go back to the beginning, because it allows us to sort of make a connection between where you started and where you are now. It kind of helps to make sense, even as you already shared, just the career swaps from going from I want to be a foot surgeon to an attorney to an author to this or that. It may seem confusing. It may seem like it's all kind of mixed up all together, but I don't think any of those things were a mistake. Those were all part of your journey process that you had to go through to get to where you are. And so, with that said, let's take a moment to go back to the beginnings, and if you would kind of walk us through what was it like for you growing up in Detroit? What was it kind of, and more specifically, like what was your childhood like?
Hmm.
Fond memories that you have about childhood, as well as if there's any specific challenges that come to mind about your childhood that you would like to share. Again, to kind of give us a foundational basis of where your story begins.
Absolutely. So my parents were young. They were college students when they met, and my older sister was born, and then they got married, and I'm number two. So I came along. I think my mother had just graduated from college, and my father was finishing up when I came along. And young students, they ain't had a whole bunch of money. I think my father was actually working at the plant at the time, so they didn't have no whole bunch of money. My parents are. Before I get too deep in it, I always like to give a shout out to my parents, my heroes, my initial heroes, because if it wasn't for them, it's nothing that I would have been able to do, because they put into me as a young person to use my mind, right? To use my thoughts to guide, to depend on myself and what I thought, and not to follow other people, right? So growing up in Detroit, like I said, I'm the oldest boy of 10 children. I have an older sister, and because I was the boy, I had to take up for my older sister, right? So she's
Mm-hmm.
older than me, but guys would try to talk to her growing up. And if they didn't, my father and my uncle, they were all boxers, right? My father was an
Mm-hmm.
athlete. My father was a street dude only because of poverty. He didn't really
Mm-hmm.
like doing that. He did it because he was poor, but he went to college and eventually got a PhD. But he was a straight up street dude from Detroit, right? So I'm the oldest boy, so they raised me in boxing and everything that they was into. I was right there with my uncles, and but they didn't really want me to be a part of that street life. They wanted me to go to school and be an athlete. So I was pushed to be an athlete. We played basketball at my home, Joseph. We played so much basketball. I don't know how many games we ran in the summertime a day, right? We played softball. We even play in the street. We played street ball, football, everything athletic. I did it all. And my father really pushed me. But my parents split when I was 11. And
Mm-hmm.
after that split, my older sister and I, she took out how her feelings on me. So she used to try to beat me up all the time. And she couldn't, you know, we talk about challenges. One of those challenges was guys would try to talk to my sister. I'm her younger brother, but I still was her protector in
Mm-hmm.
the streets, right? So if a guy got out of line, it didn't matter. I had to try to give it to him, even though he 3, 4 years older than me sometimes. But my father and my uncles taught me how to box, so I could scrap pretty good. Now you can't tell now my hair is gone, but I'm a light skinned brother. I had curly hair at the time. So one of the challenges I always had was I'm a light skinned brother with curly hair. So and you can probably relate to some of this. So I would always be challenged on if I'm softer, and I don't know what it was,
Mhm.
man. I walk into a room, so I had to fight a lot growing up because of my sister and because of that. And if I can show you the picture of my father's a dark skinned black man. So I wasn't raised. I was raised through the eyes of a. My wife say I feel like I'm a dark skinned Nigerian, but that's who my father and my uncles were. So
Mhm.
that's how I was, right? So yeah, so that's growing up, man. I had a lot of love. My parents loved me, even though they got divorced. They did their best, and as my younger siblings, they had more stuff than I did because me and my sister was what I call the first batch. So we came up lower middle class, as my mama said. We didn't get free lunch, but we was just there. I only barely had 20 cents to get that milk. You know what I'm saying? Like we didn't have any designer anything really, and so I started working early. I started cutting hair. That was my hustle, and that was my first hustle as an entrepreneur, was cutting hair, cutting my little brother's hair and his friends. And at about 16 or 17, crack hit. Well, it hit before that, but it really hit at about 16, and it changed the whole landscape of Detroit, man. And I caught the bus from the west side to the east side, and because I had a couple of rounds in fighting. I wasn't a gun toting dude. And again, I say I was an athlete, but I'm a regular dude from the west side of Detroit. So I learned how to protect myself in the city life, right?
Mhm.
I never carried a gun. I carried a knife and a straight razor, but I never had to use it because I was able to outthink the the violence that I occurred, that I came encounter with. um, and I really used my brain to outwit most of that stuff, and successfully made it east to west, west to east. I ain't got no scratches on my face. Nobody's really took my lunch money. Not to say I wasn't bullied, because in middle school I was bullied, but it was because I got in so much trouble before, Joseph, that my father told me if I get kicked out of school one more time, the whooping that I was gonna get will be one that I would never forget. My
Mm.
father was 6'3", 220 pounds of muscle at that time in his life. And I was more scared of my father than I was the bully. So I didn't get in trouble in my middle school, which was a tough middle school. I went to Cerveny Middle School in Detroit, and it was tough. It was gangs and stuff. But by the time I got into high school, I got into athletics, got into track, and really got into my academics, which propelled me to the next level of going to college. And I did really well academically. I was in the top 3% of all of the graduating seniors in the Detroit Public School the year I graduated, and went to the state championships 3 years in a row for track. So, and at the same time, I had to look out for my younger siblings. So yeah, that's my upbringing. That's coming up in Detroit. It was a lot of love, and like I said, when crack hit, that really devastated a lot of my friends' families. I
Mm.
saw my friends who got into, and my family too, got into selling drugs. My father, because he was already into that. He was already into that life. Um, when I was born, he was already into selling drugs and everything else. When I was born, by the time I was 17, back in the 80s, in the 80s, even in the 70s, sniffing cocaine and sniffing heroin was like a luxury. It showed like that you had money, right?
Mhm.
Well, you can start off playing with that stuff, but eventually it'll grab you. So by the time I was 17, it grabbed him, right? And I noticed that he was more distant, that he wasn't around. But I'm 17, so I don't really care. I'm doing what 17-year-olds do. I'm like, all right, you ain't around, daddy. You ain't coming. Me and my friends gonna do whatever, right? But my younger siblings, they experienced a different father than I had,
Mm.
right? Because I'm the oldest boy. Me and my sister had a he was okay. He was like a hero, and he didn't even let me see him in a bad light. And then I went away to college. Boop, right? But when I went to college, he really went into his battle with heroin, and that's a whole nother story. But he battled with that on and off. Even when I was in podiatry school, I went to Miami to go to podiatry school. He battled with it when I was there. So my younger siblings experienced a different father in that they saw his weakness more than I did. He didn't
Mm-hmm.
allow me to see his weaknesses. I lived with him after my parents split. I lived with him, and all I just saw him being the man. He was the man. In any circle we was in, he was the man. But by the time, when that thing grabbed him, by the time I was 19, it was a different him. And he battled with it. He moved out of the city and everything else to get away from it. But if you got a drug problem, you got a drug problem. They sell dope all over the country. They sell it in the country. They sell it in the city. And but me and him were so close. He passed away in 2017. Man, Allah be pleased with him. Um, and we were so close that he was always honest with me. You know what I'm saying? Like, he was just honest with me. He would tell me what was going on and what he was dealing with and what he wanted me to be as a man and what he wanted me to get involved in. And because him and my mother were my heroes, I
Mm-hmm.
did what he told me to do. Like I said, he was 220 muscles, so I obeyed. So, but that's some of my growing up in a nutshell, up until college, and yeah, we'll go from there.
Wow, wow. Well, let me first off in saying I appreciate your transparency and sharing that. I think it's really interesting, as you and I are very close in age, and so as you share about what it's like coming up, both Midwest. I grew up in
Mm-hmm.
Chicago,
Mm-hmm.
so I identify with, like you said, seeing the effects of inner city life, and how it gets some of your friends and some of their families, et cetera. But you're also thankful, in the fact that even in the midst of all of that, you had people around you that were, in this case, that you start off with saying, hey, my mom and my dad, my heroes. They poured into you to the extent that even though they may have been having their own personal challenges, they wanted to make sure that you had a better opportunity, a better pathway, for being successful in life. And I love the fact that you had made mention earlier about how you learned how to use your mind to
Mm-hmm.
navigate dealing with the challenges of the streets. It wasn't that the street life wasn't there. It wasn't that the challenges wasn't there. You probably, like you said, traveling from one side of town to the other, going through various gang territories and the drug scene that was out there and all of that. But being able to survive that and navigate that, to me, it's not just a thing of that you just automatically default that as to being you were lucky. No,
Mm-hmm.
it was an intelligent way of understanding. Okay, I see what's going on. I know that if I wanted to jump into that, I probably would have an easy opportunity to do so. But I
Yep.
also was smart enough to know that there was more to this life than that life. And so I'm gonna stay focused, locked in on my education, my athletics, and I'm gonna try to walk a path that's gonna perhaps get me up out of this situation to where I can again put myself in a position to experience a more positive and empowering type of lifestyle, which of course has manifested itself, just in some of the things that you've been able to do, and are currently doing in your life right now. And that's, again, this is why I love talking about, the beginnings here, because, when I think about just even your passion for pouring into young men and young fathers,
Mm-hmm.
you come from a home where your parents were young, you yourself, young dad, and all the stuff that you got a chance to see and experience and witness and was able to navigate through using your mind. Who better to be relatable and to be able to stand in front of young men? And I'm assuming that you're probably in your area, you're probably speaking primarily to young men who look like you, who look
Right.
like me.
Yep. Yep.
And so, but that's not even an easy task. But just because you're a black man speaking to young black men doesn't automatically by default mean that you're going to be able to connect and be relatable to you. There has to be something to your story, to your
Yep.
to your journey, that makes them feel like, okay, he understands us.
Mm-hmm.
He's been where we are, and he could perhaps give us some insight on being able to navigate through that using our minds, so that we too can be successful. They look at you, they see you professional, they see you speak well, they know you're well versed, well read, all of those things that these young men may not understand, right now, the significance of it. But somebody like you being an example of that positive role model makes all the difference in the world. So I say all that to say all the experiences and the things that you got to witness and observe, again, these were not by accident. This was
Right.
destined for you to go through, to experience, even when it wasn't comfortable, even when it was hard to see your dad go through his challenges. You were able to piece all of those things together, and later in life, be able to apply them accordingly and pour into others as you have done and continue to do. So
Hmm.
that's great to hear your story, and just stepping up as a young man to be the protector of your, like I said, your sister, and your sisters,
Oh, that hurts
even the older
sometimes.
one, you know, So it's a difficult thing, when you're young and you kind of have that weight of responsibility placed on your shoulders. But
Hmm.
again, your dad prepared you for that,
Yep.
and in spite of any weaknesses that he did his fatherly duties in making you to be the man that you needed to be able to survive out here in this world. So that's a great story that you to share there. And again, I appreciate you sharing that part of your childhood with us, because that's key to your journey and to your story. So
Absolutely.
with that said, my brother, as we get, as we travel through our youth and get into adulthood, obviously the experiences, the lessons, the exposure to life happenings, begin to become more expansive and broader. And in the midst of all of that, of course, is going to be a series of storms that come along our way.
Hmm.
And while some storms, we find a way to navigate through and work out, every now and then we do get hit throughout the course of our lives with a storm that kind of knocks us off our feet, to the degree that when we're in the midst of that moment, we might have questions, we might have doubts as to, how am I going to get through this? This is a little bit difficult for me. This is a little bit more challenging to me. I can't fight my way out of this one. I can't throw
Right,
no
right.
money at this situation. I can't talk my way out of this. I'm facing a storm that I don't necessarily see a way out, and I'm concerned. I'm worried. I'm anxious. I'm stressed. Obviously, you're here today, so we can trust and believe that you were able to navigate through those such moments, but you might have not saw it that way at that particular point in time. So, with that said, if you would tell us about a time when you find yourself facing a challenging situation just like that, where you really didn't see a way out, you didn't know how you were going to overcome it. Um, it was something that was a little bit way more burdensome than what you might have traditionally been accustomed to dealing with. Kind of walk us through an experience like that you had, and what was ultimately the turning point where you began to see some light at the end of the tunnel and coming up out of that situation.
So I stopped at before I went to college on purpose. So when I got to college, man, I went to school with a lot of my friends, and I didn't run track when I went to college. So that means I had a lot more time on my hands. However, I had to work. I wasn't born with a silver spoon in my mouth, so my mother really couldn't sit. I think she sent me $100 a month. And at that time, my father, this is what I say, he was unavailable because he was dealing with his stuff. So his stuff was hit or miss. So I had to work. And I picked up certain habits in college. They're not there. Because I ran track in high school, I wasn't drinking and smoking and really doing none of that. But when I got to college, I had more time and party scene, and I got to partying and drinking and smoking, and really, and then I'm like, damn, well, my grades ain't as good as they were when I was in high school, but I'm hanging out all night, drinking all night, waking up late, not study. So I picked up some bad habits, and but I was able to still do pretty decent academically. And then I really got into hip hop, right? So this is hip hop in the '90s, right? So I really got into hip hop. I became, I did a lot of rapping, writing songs, doing shows, all kind of stuff all over campus, and I was known as one of those guys in my crew. It was about 17 of us. I was one of the ones who rapped. Now they wasn't rappers, and we got into a lot. So I continued fighting in college. We brought Detroit to the college, right? So some of that stuff we did in Detroit, we brought it to college, and we got into a little trouble. We got into some legal trouble. I got arrested. The only time I was arrested and put in jail was for fighting with the police in college, all kind of stuff, man. And when I was sitting there, Joseph, all I could think of was my mom saying, "If you ever get arrested, don't call me." Right? So, and that's what was ringing in my head. Don't call me. And I'm sitting there, my friends getting out. Don't call me. They called their mom. Their mama,
Right.
my mama said, "Don't call me." So I'm getting comfortable in the cell, right? Like, first of all, this isn't fun. This isn't a hip hop video. I just want to let everybody know I ain't had no fun in jail. I don't know what everybody else did, but it was not fun to me, and I was ready to go. Fortunately, all of those friends that I had, they passed the hat, and they was able to get me out of jail that one time. And then I never wanted to do much to go back. I wasn't trying to run back to jail though I didn't stop some of the stuff I was doing as a 19-year-old, 20-year-old, 21. At 19, I got into martial arts because we was having, was doing a lot of fighting, and I started with karate and Aikido and that kind of stuff, and really got into that. But during the summer, so the summer of my senior year, going into my senior year, my girlfriend got pregnant. Right, so my girlfriend got pregnant, and I was like, okay, so what are we gonna do? So most of the time we said, what are we gonna do? And the woman didn't want to have the baby, so we did what you do to not have a baby. But this time she's like, what I want to do? Nothing. I want to have a baby. I'm like, huh? So I never dealt with that before. I'm like, dang, well, I had a job, but just enough job to buy me some potato chips and a beer on Friday, maybe a new shirt for the party, but I ain't had no raising a baby money. And, I really had to contemplate, now I'm going to be a father. And I'm still in college, so I only have a high school diploma. I don't have a degree. And I really, the baby was coming, but I was still kicking it. One of my friends, now this is what I used to do in college. Don't do this if y'all listening to me, because this did not help me. But my friend came around, he like, yo, I'm about to ride to New York. Now I had a test on Tuesday. This is a Thursday. Like, I'm about to go to New York. Anybody want to come? I got some money. I got some, some smokables. Let's go. Right. I'm like, all right, let's go. This is before the baby. I'm still rapping and everything. So yeah, I'm gonna go to New York and we're gonna rap. I'm gonna try to hook up with some people and do some rap stuff. Get out there. Now I'm not rich, right? So I had like $1,200 from loans or whatever. I had $1,200. I went there, spent the money on clothes, spent the money on kicking it, came back, flunked my test, and my girlfriend at the time, she was about maybe 6 or 7 months pregnant. So the baby about to come. And I'm like, yo, I can't keep doing this. The baby, what am I gonna do if I blow that kind of money and the baby comes? So I went and talked to a friend. I was a part of a lot of black groups when I was in college. I went and talked to a friend, and this was right after Malcolm X, and
Mm.
Malcolm X came out. And he said, you might come to the mosque, man. And I just seen the Malcolm X movie. I'm like, all right, I'll come to the mosque. I ain't scared to come. And I went, and the brothers was talking, some responsibility, being a responsible man, and getting your life together. And I'm like, that's exactly what I need. And they really, and I became, so I grew up a Christian, right, my whole life. But at that point in my life, my father was unavailable. I knew I had to do something different for my baby, right? Because if not, I didn't want her, I didn't want her to grow up and not like her father.
Mm.
I was a young man. I wasn't committed. I wasn't thinking about marriage or nothing like that, man. And I got I knew she was going to be a girl. I got a girl coming. So, I got with the brothers in the mosque, man, and really got into getting my life together. And a lot of the foolishness I was doing before, I stopped doing that. I started to pray. I started to come up with a strategy for my life. And by the time the baby came along, wasn't fooling no more. I wasn't blowing no money. I was ready for her. And I did my best to become a responsible man. It didn't happen overnight. I wasn't perfect, but it put me on a path of responsibility. And them brothers, they showed me something in addition to what my parents showed me, right? But they showed me how to strive to be an addition to what they gave me, because my parents gave me a good foundation
Mhm.
by how to deal with life's challenges when they came up. And they gave me more tools in my toolbox. And it really helped me to navigate what I needed to navigate as a 21-year-old, 22-year-old father to get through what I had to get through, graduate from college. And me and her mother, we eventually, our relationship didn't work out. But soon after that, I was rapping again, and I met who is my wife today. Went to the radio station. I'm rapping, and she came in, and I met this woman, and this has been the woman that my daughter at the time. She doesn't even remember me being with her mom, but she remembers me being with my wife, who is now her stepmom. We've been together. We've been married for 25 years, 26 years in October, and been together for 27 years. And These were things that weren't on my mind, and having these tools in my toolbox allowed me to overcome that challenge. And so that was with my oldest daughter. Now I'm gonna
Mhm.
talk. I told you I want to talk about another challenge, and this has to do with my youngest daughter, right? So eventually, I got into podiatry school in Miami, right? So I'm in podiatry school. In the first semester, I did not do good, and I was put on academic probation. I had to sit out a semester. So my wife was in law school, and I'm sitting home with the baby all day, and I got one of those checks. You ever got a class action check? I got a class action check for $70 and some odd change. So I'm going. Once my wife came home from work, I'm going to the mosque for a meeting, and I go to an ATM to deposit this check. I got about $3 in my pocket, and I'm dressed to go to the meeting. And I look to, I sent somebody standing out here, standing over to my side, and I look, and it's a brother that came up to me. He got a bandana around his face, and he a stick up kid. And I look at him, he look at me, he said, "Give me the money." Now I look like, I got on the suit, you know, I'm looking clean, so I look like I got some money, but I have this $70 check that's going to take 48 hours to clear. So
Mm.
I have no money to give him. Then he shows me the gun, Robert. He said, "I'm gonna shoot you. If you don't give me the money, I'm gonna shoot you." I said, "Brother, I don't have no money." And a couple dollars I had, I gave it to him. Now remember, I told you I started training in martial arts back when I was 19. By this time, I was 26, 26, 27. Training, always training. So he goes and he start exciting himself. He looking around, and a woman comes up to the ATM. She don't know. She just standing in line. She screams, "Ah!" And he turns his head. And I didn't I didn't think about this. I just reacted, and I was able to get the gun out of his hand. Now it's you no gun, me no gun. We gonna see who the baddest one standing up is.
Mm.
Needless to say is I don't do this if you weren't trained, and I didn't plan on doing this, but I had nothing to give him, and he was going to shoot me. Now, Joseph, I spent the whole day with my daughter, so all I could think about was my youngest daughter. You're
Wow.
gonna take me away from my daughter, and all I got is this check. So I had to fight for my life. I was able to take the gun from him, and I think he found a new career that day. But that was a challenge that I overcame, and I don't bring that up to puff myself up at all because it was very scary. It wasn't like a movie when it was happening because he was going to take me away from my daughter. And the only reason I think that I didn't get shot that day was because of my faith and my involvement and striving to be righteous. That gave me that split second when that woman screamed. If she wouldn't have come and screamed, he would have shot me. And that's all I needed for just some natural mechanics that I've been training over the years to come into effect, and for me to get that gun from him. And that was a challenge, man. That eventually I went to the mosque that day, and we tried to find the brother. We didn't find him, but after the meeting and everything, I came home to my wife, and I'm like, "You would never guess what just happened to me." Right? And I think back to that because I called my father that night, Joseph, and this was at one point where he was doing okay, and he answered the phone. My father became a clinical psychologist, neuropsychologist, so he was able to talk me through what I was feeling and
Mm.
my emotions, and he really helped me in that moment to calm down because the brothers was like, "Hey, to forget about it, Andre. Don't go chase him." I'm like, he had a heater. I don't know. I don't got no gun, so I'm not about to find him. But my father was able to stabilize my mind and get me to a point where I could deal with this traumatic situation that just happened with me, and and focus on the fact that I was there now with my daughter and there with my wife, and nothing happened to me by God's mercy that evening.
Wow. Wow. That is a very powerful story. Thankful to God that your life was spared on that day because that could have went a bunch of different directions.
Absolutely.
But again, I keep going back to this, to the full circle of just the events that took place. We talked about earlier about how, um, from a young person, as a young man, you learned about how to navigate challenges and troubles out in the streets using your mind.
Yes, sir.
Then you get into college, and yeah, you did like a lot of college kids did.
Right.
I myself included. You get caught up with that newfound freedom, and you
Mm-hmm.
lose your mind for a moment. With
Mm-hmm.
the partying and the girls and all that good stuff, and
Yeah.
it happens even to that kid who was super smart in school and all that. You
Mm-hmm.
can lose yourself in that moment because it's a shock to your system. You're not used to that, but then you nevertheless you navigate through that. You had a momentary blurb where you get locked up, for kind of getting reckless and wilding out there. But then you have an opportunity to meet some brothers
Mm-hmm.
who saw that you were kind of lost out there, saw that you were kind of wilding out, and it was an opportunity for them to pour into you, to come alongside. It was sort of the beginning of you getting exposure to what true community and accountability brothers look like versus just some friends of mine that I hang out with, like some men who saw some potential in me, wanted to pour into me about, like you said, adding to that toolkit
Yes, sir.
of skills and mindsets and ways that you should conduct yourself to be a better man, a better citizen, a better person, to avoid getting caught up in the randomness of life, not knowing that just those little bits and tools and pieces that were being poured into you would transition themselves into you ultimately one day facing a life threatening situation. And again, somebody not using their mind reacts the wrong way. And I'm glad that you emphasize that. Like, it was kind of your message of saying, don't try this at home. I'm not here trying to brag about what happened, but I was in a moment and I had to use my mind. I had to think. Today is not the day for me to be a hero. Today is not the day for me to act all super bad and tough. Even though you had boxing skills, you had martial arts skills, you still in that moment had to handle yourself and conduct yourself in a proper way. And this is where the grace of God comes in. The mercy of God intervenes in that situation, gives you just enough distraction, if you will, in that
Mm-hmm.
moment for you
Mm-hmm.
to disarm this person,
Yeah.
so that way you can not only you can be safe, but even the woman who stepped into that moment is also safe
Yeah.
in that moment. You didn't end this story saying that I killed this man. You didn't end up in this story saying that I went after him and his family or anything like that. You handled the situation. You used the skills to get yourself as a defense mechanism to get yourself out of the situation, not to seek revenge, not to come after anybody, because in your mind you understood that there's more to life that still lies ahead for me. It started with you thinking about your daughter.
Mm-hmm.
You were in
Absolutely.
that moment, you're thinking, hey, I don't want her to know what life is like without me.
That's right.
We just getting started with this. So I want to be here for her.
Mm-hmm.
You gotta have some common sense, some intelligence, some the proper mindset to know, when to speak, when not to speak, when to do, when not to do. And you were showing examples of that even at that young age in that particular moment. um and then I think to top off your story, which is so beautiful, you've already shared about your dad getting caught up in the challenges of dealing with the whole drug scene and how it was impacting his life. But who knew on that particular day, in that particular moment, you would catch your dad
Mm-hmm.
at a time when he was in his right mind, when his mind was clear, when he was focused, and now he was able, the hero that you always saw him as, even in the
Yeah.
midst of his weakness, he was now able to pour into you once again
Yeah.
and bring you down and help you process
Mm-hmm.
what you went through. Again, I don't think that those connections, that whole line of how that played out was an accident. It was supposed to go that way. You're sharing this story. That story that you just shared is going to be, I know it blessed me. It's going to be impactful for somebody that's listening that that maybe they don't have a good control of their emotions in those moments of somebody
Mm-hmm.
coming at them or whatever. And then just a reminder that God is so good, and that even somebody, particularly somebody who's close to us, yeah, they might go through their struggles, they might go through their challenges, but you don't have to give up on them. There's a God that still loves them enough, loves
That's
them
right.
unconditionally, and can deliver them through
Mm-hmm.
that situation, and your dad was able to be the dad that you always knew him to be, that you grew up to see him be, and he was once
Hmm.
again there to pour into you and say, hey son, this time he wasn't teaching you about boxing, he
Right,
wasn't
right,
teaching you
right.
about the streets, he was teaching you how to do what, to develop your mind, to control your emotions, process things in a healthy an appropriate manner so that you can walk out of that situation again locked in and focused in leading your life in a way that is honorable to God, being that husband, being that father, being
Hmm.
that man of integrity, even in spite of the storms or the attacks that might come your way. So I just love your story, man, and again, thankful that you were able to survive that situation,
Yes, sir.
but nevertheless, very very powerful message in what you shared. So appreciate you, in your transparency with that.
Yes, sir.
Um, so with that said, my brother, we know that these challenges, these storms of life, they're going to come. Sometimes they're going to be major things, like some of the things that you shared. Sometimes it's just going to be the day to day lifing type stuff. What I'm curious to know from you, however, is when you do find yourself facing adversity of any kind, big, small, or otherwise, what is your that best practice, if you will, or that routine or regimen, if you will, that you like to do that kind of helps you to deal with adversity or challenging moments in a healthy and a productive way, where you're able to stay focused but deal with whatever the situation is before you. What works best for you?
Well, I learned along the way from my dad, from my mom, from the brothers at the my brothers and sisters. I ain't just gonna say brothers and sisters at the mosque. That really, yourself, you can control yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, no matter how I want to control my daughters or my wife, I can think I control them. But the one thing that for sure I can control are my thoughts, right? And how I react to things. So the toolbox that I have now is full of tools, man. I got all kind of tools, and I go back to the basics. I pray, I pray a lot. I study a lot. I study wise men throughout history in the Bible and the Quran, right? In our history as in this country, and I study how they deal with certain situations, and I apply it. I apply the best things from that to the situation that I have, and a lot of it is, I start with prayer and study. I still try to be athletic, so I still work out, run, box, whatever, martial arts, and I try to focus on my thoughts and what I can do to make the situation better, regardless of what anyone else is doing. What can Andre do? And this is what marriage. This is what you learn. This is what you learn being married, right? Okay, well, okay. Now we got into it. Well, what did you do, stupid? Right? And I'm not talking about her, stupid. I'm talking about me, stupid. I'm looking in the mirror, like Michael Jackson said, right? And what can I do to improve this situation? Humble myself, ask for forgiveness for the things that I know I did wrong, right?
Mm-hmm.
and and then see if I can use kindness again and humility to move forward to fix the situation. Because I know I'm blessed being married. Like I said, I never thought about that, but that's a good good example of how I use my tools and how I've been able to stay married as long as I have. Some people might say you whipped. Yeah, I'm whipped with the love that this woman has given me for all these
Mm.
years, and I want to make sure that I continue to get it. And just some fly by night smile, and it don't matter how beautiful you are, uh, to get me away from this woman that's invested in me and made sure that I've come through all of these challenges because we kind of grew up together. She accepted my daughter. I came in the marriage with a child, right? So I use those tools, man, in my toolbox, to analyze myself and improve myself so that moving forward, I can be in the best place possible. And I won't blame nobody else, because if I did everything that I could do in the situation to make it better, then it doesn't really matter what anybody else do. So no matter what that guy tried to do that night, it didn't matter. But at the end of the night, he was like a rag doll in my hands by Allah's mercy, right? And not just because I'm super bad, but by that mercy that God gave me that night. So that's what I go back to, man. Prayer, study, and focus on improving myself in situations.
I love that approach, man, because it it speaks to an area that we oftentimes don't like. The part of what you said that we oftentimes don't like to look at when we're going through challenging moments is what is our role in this?
Hmm.
What role do we play in perhaps being in the midst of this storm, and what things can we do to with ourselves, to make this moment in time that we're this event in time uh, go a little bit smoother than it might otherwise do if I spent all my energy, whether it be feeling sorry for myself or spent all my energy blaming everything and everyone instead
Hmm.
of taking some accountability, some self assessment, working on myself to be better able and equipped to handle those moments. So I love when you talk about, I take time to study, not just the word of God, but I take time to study wise men.
Hmm.
The God speaks, very profoundly in both the Bible and even in the Quran about the importance of wisdom, the value of that.
Yes.
And it's key, it's essential that if we really spent more time in embracing wisdom and surrounding ourselves with, around wise men and wise women, how much better we might be in terms of particularly how we handle adversity and challenging moments. It's using our brain. We keep going back to that,
Yes, sir.
thinking about what we're doing and how we're processing and making it make sense, versus getting caught up in all of our feelings and emotions or being so quick to point the finger and blame towards everybody else and not doing that, taking that humble moment to self, assess and self correct as needed so that we're positioning ourselves to be able to face those moments of adversity and challenges in life. And what you do is clearly a regular practice of way of life, if you will. So you're not, and I think that's just another key thing to point out is that you're not waiting for something to go down
Right. Yes, sir.
before you start studying, before you
Right.
start praying, before you
Mhm.
start, trying to better who you are, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, physically. This is an ongoing way. So if that's your way of life, if that's how you operate, then the timing of the storm or the level of intensity of the storm doesn't really matter because
Right.
you stay ready. I
Right.
stay prepared for the moment, so that way it doesn't throw me all into a shock, if you will. It's not knocking me off my feet to the point where I'm just totally blown away and not knowing what to do. Yeah, you're still human. You're still going to have
Hmm.
your initial response to it, frustration, sadness, anger, what have you. But you're equipping yourself to not to get stuck there, and
Right.
you've prepared yourself in such a way to be able to process through and work through that challenging moment in time and be okay. It's because it's going to happen. It's not a matter of if, but when. We're
That's
all
what
going to
I was
face
gonna
those
say.
storms.
It
It's
will
it's going to
happen.
happen,
Yep.
but how do you respond when it does?
Hmm.
You know, and so I think your approach is, is one of multitude of different approaches that can be taken that allows you to do this in a healthy and productive manner. And to where you can still be standing, when it's all said and done, even in the midst of those storms. And as I say all the time to people, we have to learn to understand that our storms are not even intended to be negative events. They're opportunities for us to grow, to
Hmm.
develop, to become better versions of ourselves. We go through those storms for a reason. God allows them to come our way for a reason, and it's never to harm us, to take us out, or to destroy us. It's to make us better versions of who we are, so we can in turn be used accordingly to
Mm.
be of service to others as we were gifted and equipped to be. That's what we're here for, to be of service.
Yes,
So
sir. I agree.
beautiful stuff, man. So Andre, man, it has been an absolute pleasure, man, catching up with you, learning more about your story.
For sure.
Again, appreciating your transparency and openness and sharing as you have. Like I said, I know I've been blessed. I know my listeners are gonna be blessed by your story and all that you shared and the works that you're doing, man. God's anointing is all over you, and I'm loving every bit of it and just seeing your growth in your work and your progress, man. It's an inspiration and encouragement to me, and I'm just loving that you took the time out to share. But before I let you go, as is
Hmm.
customary here at the Blessings in the Streets podcast, man, I want to take an opportunity to show you some love, to celebrate you, to acknowledge you. So if you got anything going on or coming up, be it professionally and or personally, that you would like to share with us, I would appreciate you, man, to let us know what's coming up, what's in store for Brother Andre. What should we be looking out for? What we need to know about, how we can support and connect with you. Please
Hmm.
share with us because we want to acknowledge that and celebrate that. What you got going on that we need to know about?
I am, like you said, we met working on these books. So you can go to yourbrotherandre.com and check out my books. You know, I'm about to do some hardcovers. Your book was hardcover. My books were never hardcover, Joseph. So I'm doing some hardcovers on my books. Working on programs, man. I've just been talking with people here uh, where I'm at here in Michigan, and I'm going to start doing some programs in the juvenile detention centers with juveniles, empowering futures, sharing wisdom, and saving lives. This is going to be the title of this program where I expose them to entrepreneurship. I expose them to different aspects of career paths that they can go on. I've been doing some research because I'm in the community economic development. I do a lot of look and research at data, poverty data specifically. And with this poverty data, I mean, I'm always seeing it. So I'm working with these young guys, and they're like, okay, Andre, I'm not going to be a stick up kid. I'm not going to be a dope boy, but I need to make some money. So how can I make money? And I'll usually say, well, get a job, right? And that's like, right. But today we're in a unique time period where you have a lot of these technology certification programs that are available for cheap that will give you an opportunity in under a year to get a career that can change your condition. So you can make, 60, $70,000 in 10 months if you apply yourselves to these tech certifications. So these are some programs that I'm rolling out in different aspects, exposing our youth to let them know that, hey, this is a path, this is a strategy that you can use for your life, so you no longer have to be in poverty and in desperation, but you can make a decent wage so you can take care of yourself and your family. So I'm rolling that project out again. That's going to be a part of the Empower Future, Sharing Wisdom and Saving Lives program that I'm rolling out. And I have courses, online courses for teen and young fathers. You can follow me at your underscore brother underscore Andre on TikTok, where I share different advice for teen and young fathers. And those are some of the things that I have going on. And,
Man,
yep.
that is beautiful stuff. And again, to my listeners, he's giving you the links on how to follow him, how to check out his products and services. If that's something that is of interest to you, or if you know somebody that can benefit from that, I would definitely encourage you to follow this brother along. Like I said, I've had the pleasure of knowing him for 2.5, coming up on 3 years now, and this brother has done leaps and bounds just in a short period of time. I mean, and he's genuine and he's authentic and he's true in his desire to pour into the lives of other people and to meet them at their respective needs using his gifts that God has placed within him to do so. So we're not just talking about the brother here that's just trying to make a buck, just to say something to you just for the sake of saying it, to get you to open up your pocketbooks and
Right.
swipe your cards. This brother is genuine and true in doing what is he's offering up in a very professional, with high integrity mindset about taking care of business and making a change for people. So if there's anything about what he does that you've gleaned from this evening, or that's encouraged you to want to find out more, please do check him out. I've supported some of his services, in his early books, and I need to do a little bit more because his brother is, like I say, he's got some new stuff since I last talked to him. So we got to check him out and keep on supporting him and others like him
Mhm.
that are doing the works that they're doing. This is a God anointing on his life. This is a vision that he's placed in his heart, and what he's simply doing is he's walking in his purpose. Not to say that walking in your purpose is an easy thing to do, but he's living out the purpose that God has specifically placed for him, and he's doing a magnificent work. And I'm excited to just see what more is in store for you in the days and the weeks and months and years to come. So I'm proud of you, my brother. I'm so thankful
Thank you.
that you're hanging out with us tonight and sharing as you have. And to my audience, if you've enjoyed our content this evening, you've enjoyed the message that Brother Andre has shared in his journey and his story, and it's impacted you, and you're feeling what he's talking about here and what we're doing here with the podcast, please subscribe, please share, please comment, please like, because this is what the Blessings in the Streets podcast is all about. We want to empower, we want to inspire, we want to encourage, we want to uplift, trying to be as transparent and as vulnerable as we possibly can, sharing with you real life, relatable things that we all go through with the hopes that thinking that, there might be something from our journey, something from our lives that you can apply to your respective situations and in your respective walk. That's going to be a benefit. That's going to be a blessing to you. Because again, this is what it's all about. We serve a God that loves us unconditionally, wants nothing but the best for us. And so, if you don't currently have a relationship with Him, today would be a mighty fine day to make that happen. Get your circle around you, get that community around you of wise men and women who want to see you do well, who want to see you be successful, who want to connect with you accordingly and lift you up, especially in those dark moments when you're not feeling, at your best, or you're feeling like, that you're out here by yourself. Just know that you're not. And again, it begins with that relationship with God. So, with that said, I'm so thankful that you tuned in this evening. And remember, here at the Blessings in the Streets podcast, this is the place where your story is your glory, where your relationships are relevant, and your journey is. I am your host, Joseph B. Roberts. Thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time, you keep fighting that good fight. Don't let those moments of adversity and challenge overtake you. Yes, we're going to all deal with storms. They're going to come, but you don't have to stay stuck in that moment. Use this as an opportunity to grow and develop and become a better version of yourself. But most importantly, don't feel like you got to fight this fight alone. There's a God who loves you and wants you to just lean into Him, lean to His understanding, His guidance, and His direction. And I promise you, He won't lead you astray. His record is flawless, is undefeated. You can trust in Him. And as long as you do so, the blessings upon your life and then how you can be a blessing to others, the limit is limitless, if you will. So, with that said, you have a great rest of your evening, and I look forward to seeing you next time.